Welcome back to the Subtle Sport podcast. Now, this is usually the point where we say thank you to our sponsor, but we are doing things a little bit differently this year because with a new year comes a new sponsorship. You have the opportunity to sponsor Subtle Sport in 2025 for as little as £20. Now, as our fans and followers are well aware, we were sponsored by Corby Car Clinic last year, and we are truly grateful to them. However, this year, like I said, we're doing things a little bit differently. This year, we will be doing a football card. That card will have 40 teams on it. Each square on the football card is £20. And then once the card is full, we'll scratch off the team and we'll have our main sponsor for the year. Don't worry if you're not successful with the sponsorship for the year, because your £20 does get you a shout out on at least one podcast this year. For more information, check the description of the video or head to our Instagram at SuttleSport and we will give you more information when it becomes live. I believe it become live today. So as of January the 10th, and we have started the process. So head over there to check out some more details. Now that's over and done with, let's move into today, kicking off 2025 with a good one. As always, I'm joined by Bailey. Bailey, mate, how are we?
I'm very good, thank you.
Good, mate. It's good to be back, isn't it? Because I think it's the first time since November since we've done a podcast because of work and everything. So it's good, isn't it, mate?
Yeah, it's been a very long time, to be fair. I think it's a bit weird being back on here, but I'm glad.
Good, mate. And we are joined today by a former Cambridge United player and someone who's worked his way from step 1, step 4. He's played all across non-league and is now at Corby Town. It's Rory McAuley. Rory, mate, thank you for joining us today, mate. And how are we?
Yeah, no problem, my man. Pleasure to be with you guys. Looking forward to it.
Excellent, mate. Well, let's get started then, lads. And I mentioned there, Rory, you're at Corby Town now. But do you just want to give myself, Bailey, and the people listening a little rundown of your career so far, where you've played and so forth?
Thought it might take about an hour to do that. Yeah, I started off at Norwich City's academy. Went over to sort of Cambridge City, was going to Cambridge United, come through the ranks at Cambridge United. Captained the club numerous times. Then after that, I went to Dartford, then down to Chelmsford, followed by, after that was Lowestoft, then Kings Lynn, Bedford, Peterborough Sports, and now finally at the age of 35, Corby Town.
I mean, I think the ideal place to start then, mate, would be that time at Cambridge when you moved there from Norwich in the academy years. What was it like coming through at Cambridge? Obviously, we now know it as like a pretty established football league club, but a decade or so ago, it was in the National League, wasn't it? What was it like breaking through down there?
Yeah, so when I first arrived there, it was after they'd gone bust. They'd reformed, but in the National League they still had a large budget. So I was in the youth team, and it was quite hard to see a way into the first team because they was getting all the experienced players, ex-football league players, stuff like that. And I managed to break into the first team as a central midfield player, and then there was a bit of a sort of exodus when loads of these sort of ex-pros that were on sort of big money for the level was all leaving, and some of the other young lads along with myself sort of played a lot more regularly. I took to it really well. Like I said before, I ended up captaining the team, called up to England C 3 times when I was there. And yeah, the sort of first sort of season, I think we were struggling in the National League, and it was actually sort of the players that were graduated through the youth team that helped them stay in the league to then sort of kick on there and end up where they are now.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you were young when you were breaking through, and it's quite a physically demanding league, isn't it? Especially non-league in general is very demanding physically. What was it like? Did you feel any pressures at all breaking in, physically or anything like that?
No, not really, to be honest with you. Sort of my sort of strength to my game is my sort of physicality, my bravery, in terms of putting my head and my body in places that others wouldn't. And I think because of that, as a sort of 18, 19-year-old lad breaking in, that sort of enabled first team managers to trust me, because they saw that I wasn't shy and I'd become reliable and dependable pretty quickly.
And yeah, I have seen a photo floating across Twitter and Instagram of you with a bandage around your head. I think you're at King's Lynn, so I don't discount that at all, mate. But you do put your head into challenges where you didn't
I'll
know.
tell you, you could probably find a photo with a bandage on from every club I've played for.
Well, you mentioned as well that you got called up to England C. Now, me and Bailey have spoken to someone before who's been a part of like the England C setup. What was that moment like for you? Because it is very much like for players in non-league, the opportunity to represent your country, isn't it? And it's a big thing, especially in non-league.
Yeah, it's massive. Look, sometimes you can like downplay it as it's the England C team. It's not the England first team, but it's a massive honour. When I got called up, I played against Luton on a Tuesday night at Kenilworth Road. I'd scored the winner with about 10 minutes to go. We ended up winning 1-0. I think that was the last time Cambridge United actually have beaten Luton. So that's a little record to hold on to. And then, yeah, I got into training the next day, and the manager had said that they've had contact from the England C, and I was being called up to make my debut against the Gibraltar national side in Gibraltar. And yeah, it was an unbelievable feeling. And when you stand there and you've got the England shirt on and the national anthems playing, it's a brilliant feeling, and you get all the sort of bells and whistles that come with it. You get picked up, chauffeur driven from your house to the airport. Everything, all expenses
Yeah.
paid for, so everyone's ordering the steaks. Yeah, and it's just a brilliant experience, and you nick as much training kit as you can.
I was going to say, if you still got or anything knocking about at all, or
Yeah, I've still got the shirts and the training kit, which is now I'm glad I've got because my little boy, who's now into his football, and he sort of really got stuck into it. He's at Norwich under sevens,
yeah.
so he's now going through all my old shirts and my trophies and photos. And obviously, at the time, you don't think about stuff like that, but it's when my little boy's going through it all, and I can talk to him about it all. It's really special.
No, I can imagine, mate. I mean, the time at Cambridge, I'm sure, is something you'll look back on with massive pride because you went on to make, about 145 league appearances for them, which is no mean feat at all. Did you think you'd make that many appearances when you first broke through?
Yeah, if I'm honest with you, I didn't ever see myself being anywhere else because I'd been there from so young till I was
Mm.
25. So I'd been there nearly sort of 10 years. Um, yeah, I didn't see myself going anywhere else. So when that all come to an end, that was yeah, a little bit of a shock to the system.
I mean, I guess my follow up question from that is what was your fondest memory from your time at Cambridge? Because I'm sure there's a fair few.
Well, there's a couple of goals. The Luton one I just
Yeah.
mentioned, that's probably one of my favourite. Also, FA Cup goal I scored against Huddersfield away. That was a good moment. Then, obviously, the England call up whilst I was there, and just playing at the Abbey Stadium. Cambridge United got a great
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
following, and because I'd come through the youth team, they sort of really took to me and my style of play, and just playing there every other week, them singing your name, just the whole experience of it was good. And they've got one of them real old school grounds,
No, they do.
probably
Yeah.
too old school now, but I'm a sort of football romantic. I like them sort of grounds and the Kenilworth roads, and I'm not a big fan of the new sort of plastic
No, I'm
stadiums.
with you on that one, mate, to be fair.
Yeah.
I mean, Bailey, is there anything you want to bring up at all to Rory about his time at Cambridge?
Obviously, Cambridge being sort of the first team you were involved in. Obviously, we'll go into a lot of detail about the other clubs later on. But what was the main difference between the Cambridge dressing room and obviously the England dressing room? So obviously you're all at the same sort of standard, but sort of was there any I'm trying to get the word out. Um, was the training better as such with England, or was there a massive difference you could tell, or was it kind of similar?
To be honest, Cambridge, like for the most part, we was always a team that was on the sort of upper side of the league table. So and we was full time as well, which at the time not all clubs were. So we had a good setup, good coaches, good players. So going into the England C setup, there wasn't loads of difference. Obviously, there was some really good players like Andre Gray who was there, who went on to go and play in the Premier League and stuff like that. But yeah, the quality was pretty similar.
I mean, just quickly as well, Rory, you mentioned then about players like Andre Gray and whatnot. What were sort of those players in and around the England C team then that have gone on to, astronomical heights? And did you notice that ability when you went into the camp then?
There was Andre Gray. I'm trying to think. My memory's pretty bad. There's another lad there. I think Marvin. I'm not sure what his last name is. Who's at Sheffield Wednesday now. There was a few others there. I think Jamie Vardy played for England C as
Yeah.
well. Not at the same time as what I did, but he was there. And there's loads of footballers that have gone on to play in the Football League and the Championship from that setup.
I mean, moving on from those years at Cambridge, then, mate, you went to Dartford, and I can imagine it was quite the adaptation, both on and off the pitch. Before I ask you about your time there, how did that move come about?
So Dartford, I briefly went on loan there, and they've got a lovely setup there. The stadium's lovely. They was in the National League at the time, and they was getting 2,500 fans every week, and it was a really good club. So when I left Cambridge United, I met with a few managers and had a few different offers, but the sort of, I suppose, that familiarity and the setup they had was what drew me to go there.
Hmm.
It's a long way from Norwich, I'll tell you
Yeah.
that. But there was another lad called Luke Daly that me and him travelled in with together, so it weren't too bad.
I mean, that kind of also feeds into something I was going to ask as well, because were you travelling down from Norwich every week almost to Dartford, or were you staying close by? How did it work for you?
Yeah, so I'd travel in. So when I come out of full-time football, obviously I was used to training every single day. And when I went from full-time to part-time, my aim was to get back to full-time football. So
Hmm.
like a lot of the other lads had jobs and stuff like that, I was sort of focusing on doing well and trying to get back full-time. So I did the travelling from Norwich along with my friend Luke Daly, who had not long been out of the pro game himself, and he had the same aims. Um, so yeah, it was at the time as well. I think the toll bridge, they didn't have the automatic cameras, so it was about 3.5 hours to get there from Norwich, but a little bit quicker on the way back because the Teesside traffic had died
Yeah.
down.
I mean, what was it like then, the adaptation on the pitch? Because you spoke then about going from full time football to part time football. You also went from a Cambridge team that were almost constantly or near enough fighting to go up, fighting for playoffs and so forth, to a Dartford team that are on the opposite end of the scale. How was that adaptation?
For me, in terms of my performance, I sort of thrived because I'm a defensive player. So I was getting a lot of work for most of the seasons, and because of that, I picked up quite a few man of the matches. But on the flip side, we was losing quite a few games, and yeah, there was some tough times. And just going from that full time, like even though they're a professional club, Dartford, in terms of they try and do things properly, there's a slightly different mentality in part-time football. You don't necessarily get all the protein shakes at the final whistle, and you don't necessarily go out for your cool down. You get in your car and you shoot off, and it's difficult to not get sucked into that when everyone else is doing it.
I mean, how big is it? How hard is it, especially with like going from part time football, especially because obviously it's FA Cup weekend this weekend, and I don't
Yeah,
know if you boys have seen it, but obviously Tamworth forgot Tottenham on Sunday,
yeah,
and Tom Tonks going around doing like his delivery shifts with bread and so forth. He was on ITV News the other night, uh,
yeah.
and he was talking about how they're only part time. They're getting like massages and stuff like that whilst he's out
Yeah.
there delivering. What's that sort of like for you?
Well, firstly, I'll tell you, I've been on the end of a few of his long throw-ins, having to head them away. Um, but yeah, it is tough. Like, and you just get used to it. And life as a non-league football player, it is tough. Like, I don't want anyone's sympathy, but you
Yeah.
go from working 9, 10 hour shifts into for myself 2, 3 hour car journeys. Playing matches, training, getting back in the early hours in the morning to get up at 6 o'clock again, and you can become a zombie at times. But
Mm.
I don't, I know now I wouldn't change it for the world, and I know at some point that I'm not going to be able to do that. And when I'm not doing it, I'll miss it.
No, definitely, mate. I mean, Bailey, have you got anything at all to add to that?
Obviously, like we were talking about, with obviously being the defensive player, doing really well in some games and getting man of the match, but obviously you are losing. What effect does that have going from such a high to not necessarily such a low, but a bit of a lower point in you're not picking up your wins more as often as you were in your previous club.
Yeah, that's what football is like. Football's not sunshine and rainbows. And to be honest with you, about 70, 80% of it is dealing with tough situations, like losing games, tough moments on pitches. Very well, most often in a season, you don't end up successful at the end of it. You got one club in non-league that will win it out of 20, 24 teams, depending on what league you're in. And then you've got one that will get up through the playoffs. So for the other 22 teams, the season finishes miserably. So you sort of have to deal with that. And I sort of, my way of dealing that is looking after my own performance. So whether I win, lose, or draw, if I can come home, put my head on the pillow at night and know I've done my bit, I get some comfort in that.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm sure Bailey will agree for me, just from like talking to you and obviously looking back on your football career so far. You're very much like a leader, a strong person, strong mentality, and that's why you've gone into so many places, had captain's armbands at so many places. When you've been a captain, what sort of pressures come with that, especially now with Corby looking at a potential promotion? How do you keep people around you level-headed? What's that sort of like?
For me, I think it's just part of me. Whether I'm at work or at football, I can be sort of quite focal, especially on the football pitch. Talking almost helps my game because it keeps me switched on. If I'm having to talk different situations, I'm more aware. If I actually probably tried not to be on mute for a game, I'd probably have a stinker. So yeah, more being a captain doesn't really change a lot on the pitch for me. It's probably going through the fines list for the lads and organising who's paying what and when it's due and the people that haven't paid, that side of it. And obviously you deal with more stuff probably at the club with the manager and the chairman. You're sort of probably on the inner circle a little bit. So you deal a little bit with like sort of politics of how things work and what's going on. That's probably the biggest thing for being a captain. So it's not actually to do much with on the pitch how it
Yeah.
affects me.
I mean, you mentioned there about a fines list and everything. Does that mean you're responsible for the end of season nights out at all or anything like that?
Maybe. Now, to be fair, at Corby we've got a fines committee of four lads, of which two probably have input, and the others are just sort of hiding in the group chat. But
Yeah.
yeah, we managed to collect in a few quid for the Christmas do, and we're on course for a good end of season do as well.
Oh, that's good, mate. I mean, you went on to play for, like you said, Chelmsford and lower stuff, but I also wanted to talk about your time with Kings Lynn. And it was a
Yeah,
strong Kings Lynn team that you were at because, well, me and Bailey know this pretty well because Kettering were in and around them leagues that year.
yeah.
Um, so we were going home and away whilst playing in the academy at the time to most games. So we know how good that Kings Lynn team was, and it showed because you got promotion. What was it like getting promoted with Kings Lynn?
My Kings Lynn time is probably my favourite out of all my clubs to date. Um, just the way we played football was just exceptional. We didn't kick the ball long. We just played out from the back every single game, and it wasn't necessarily winning the games. It was how we was winning them. We was just controlling games from start to finish, and we had players like Ryan Jarvis in centre midfield, Adam Marriott, who's the best striker I've ever played with, just banging them in, and there was so much character in that team. And by character, I don't mean everyone sticking their head in and stuff like that, but Maz would pop up with a goal when you need it. Jarv would get on the ball when we're under pressure. Chris Henderson would pop up with goals, and Gashi up top was a massive character and just would pop up at vital moments. And then you had Michael Clunan, the skipper, who just made things tick over. Jordan Richards. There's just so many good people in there that it just every time, like, doesn't matter if it was 1, 2, 3, 4-0 down, we'd always find a way to come
Yeah.
back.
I mean, Bailey, have you got anything to add about that time at Kings Lynn? I briefly mentioned them, but obviously we were following Kettering quite heavy at that point, so we know a lot about that Kings Lynn team, how good it was.
Yeah, it was very annoying because I think that was one of the seasons where we were trying to go up as well. I think Kettering was at National League North, weren't it? So Kettering, I think the first couple of seasons we were struggling really badly, and you just see Kings Lynn just up there and just every single game just battering teams. But obviously, with you being with Cambridge in the National League and your other teams in there, what was the biggest difference between the years?
Um, so the difference between Cambridge United and Kings Lynn, like style of play and stuff like that.
Obviously, you're playing in the same league, but
Yeah.
what was the difference between your
Oh,
first time in the league and the next time? If that makes
so
sense.
yeah, no, I've got you. When I was with Cambridge United, the first time in the National League, there was probably about half to two-thirds of the clubs were full-time professional outfits. The rest were part-time teams. When I got there with Kings Lynn, I think we was one of two that was part-time. The rest were all full-time football clubs. And the standard was ridiculous. You had the likes of Notts County with £2 million budgets. You had the Wrexhams with big budgets. Stockports, I think maybe Grimsby might have been in there. You had the Solihull's. You had all these big, massive clubs with massive budgets, and it was almost like the National League. You could have put any of them teams into League Two and they would have finished near the top.
Yeah.
It's almost become like a League Three. A lot of them teams now have managed actually to get promotion. I'm not sure what the standard's like now, but in terms of the first time I played in there, it was good, but I think the standard had gone up by the time I'd got there with Kings Lynn.
I think it's very
Yeah,
interesting there, Rory, that you say it's like a League Three in England, because I 100% agree with you. Non-league has changed, in my opinion, a lot over the last decade or so, especially with, I think, the amount of money some clubs are putting into it. Not every club, but there is a couple of clubs across the pyramid that are
Mm.
putting money into it, with a lot of Premier League players dropping down. You know, you look at like Charlie Austin, who was playing League Two last season with Swindon, I think it was,
Yeah,
AFC Tutin or Tutin in the southern sort of leagues. Niall Ranger, obviously at Kettering, just to name two.
yeah.
As someone who has played in non-league, just to elaborate a bit more on what you were starting to say then, how has non-league changed in your opinion, over the last decade or so?
It's evolved massively. Like the standard of football, like you come up against some step 4 and 5 clubs. It's probably Pep Guardiola's fault because everyone tries to play out from the back now, even on
100%,
quagmires.
yeah.
But there is some unbelievable football played in non-league. And like I said, I'm a bit of an old romantic, and I just love non-league football. Even like the fact when you go there and the kids can run around and play football and people having a beer in the stand. Um, and just like you get at non-league football clubs, you have all the people that have been going there for 10, 20, 30 years and the volunteers and stuff there. But in terms of the standard, it's gone right up. Some of the grounds haven't matched that though. Some of them are stuck in the 1960s.
Yeah,
But yes, the non-league's really strong, and that you see a lot now as well. There's so many players getting moves from non-league to the
yeah,
football league and to the championship. You see it all the time. I think I was watching last night, watching Peterborough play, and the striker for Peterborough was at Altrincham last year.
yeah. Chris Conklin,
Um,
I think it was, yeah.
yeah, and you just see players all the time getting their moves. Um, so yeah, it's almost a second chance for players as well when they come out the academies that got a no at the time to prove people wrong. They drop into non-league, and if you're a 19 year old that's played 30 games in the Conference North or South, people are going to start looking at you.
Yeah. I think it's definitely seen much more. It's got much more eyes on it, like you do say, because so many EFL teams are picking up players from non-league now. I think it's a bit more respected in some ways as well, and it's not seen as like park pitches or anything like that. There is a lot of quality in non-league, and I think the players in there are very, very talented. I'm sure you agree as well, Bailey.
yeah. Obviously, having watched Kettering a bit this season and a couple of seasons before, we have a look at the players, and obviously the FA Cup is one of the greatest tools to watch the non-league football, and the fact that obviously you always have an FA Cup upset, but the fact that Tamworth are going through to round three and teams like that is ridiculous, and it just shows the dedication from the non-league players. But I did want to ask Rory was, like we were alluding to a minute ago, do you think that the amount of money that your sort of Wrexhams and your Notts counties get, do you think that is one of the reasons why they just skip pretty much League Two? Because obviously Wrexham out of the National League after so long, and it's only taken them a season to get through to League Two. Do you reckon
Yeah.
that there might be too much money in the National League?
No, no, I don't think there's too much money. Everyone spends the money to get out the league, so um, whether that's rightly or wrongly, everyone would do it. You'd want your club to do it. I'm sure
Yeah.
Kettering actually have. To be fair, give the big money. I think they're doing
Yeah.
it now with the
Yeah.
players they got.
Definitely.
But but yeah, no, but it's because it's literally the setup of the National League with one promoted, one playoffs. You just
Yeah,
get all these big clubs stuck in the league. And then you go into League Two, and I think what is it, two or three automatics and one in the playoffs.
I think it is. Yeah.
So it's always going to happen because the system is easier to get promoted. So I think it's a really high stat. Like I think it's like 1 in 8 or 9 National League teams that get promoted end up getting promoted again,
Hmm.
which is really high. You don't see that in loads of other leagues. And don't know, it's a tough one. Like if you've like I said, if you've got someone at your club that wants to spend the money, the fans are going to want to see him get promoted. So I guess all clubs are trying to find someone that's gonna back him for that.
No, definitely. I think it is one of them where if it's happening to your club, like you mentioned there with Ketra and some of the players they've got at the moment, it's a hell of a ride. But if it's happening against you, you're not too much of a fan because I know Kettering have got some slack this season, and sometimes
Yeah,
rightly so. But that's another conversation altogether. I mean, I wanted to go back to that sort of time with Kings Lynn, Rory. It was almost in like that COVID sort of period, wasn't it, when you were down at Kings Lynn? What was that sort of COVID years like? Because we've sat down with so many players who have said it took a
yeah,
massive toll on them mentally and really difficult, especially in non-league when you're like part-time footballers. You're
yeah.
losing that income, you're losing your job income. What was it like for you?
Well, to be honest with you, with the football, it's sort of we was classed as, I can't remember what word they used, but elite. Was it elite? I think we was classed as elite, so we was able to continue playing football.
Hmm.
The bit that I didn't like was we got the back-to-back motions from step 3 and step 2. So the COVID year for us was when we was in the National League.
Hmm.
So we've just worked our nuts off for 2 seasons to get these promotions, wanting to go away to your Notts counties with 8 or 9 thousand there, your Wrexhams with 6 or 7 thousand there. We ended up having to go and play in empty stadiums. Was already up against it anyway, and on top of that, there was no fans there, which obviously kills the atmosphere.
No, definitely.
And for me, like that sort of took away our reward for all the hard work in getting them promotions.
I mean, the reason I asked why it took such a toll on is because we're very much like a mental health sort of we focus on
Yeah,
mental health in players and so forth like that. Me and Bailey have both openly said on the show struggled with
yeah,
mental health whilst playing football in the past. It's something we focus on. One thing I did pick up on my research is you now do like a lot of public speaking with academies and trying to get young players on the right path. What made you go into that and how important is it, especially for young players in academies who are sort of breaking into like under 18s, under 21s football, not to get too carried away early?
yeah. So for me, it's probably a little bit different to that. I've had mental health struggles, probably like a lot of people. Um, I struggled when I come out of full-time football. For about 18 months. The sort of ego taken a hit, the sort of lost my way a little bit, got involved and was doing things that I would never associate with previously. And then shortly after that, I was first on scene after my sister's murder. And then my sort of mental health plummeted, and that sort of spiraled out of control probably for another 18 months. And like I said, I was getting involved in things that I would never have done before, and it ended with a 4.5 year prison sentence. Um, so yeah, I know all about the mental health and the struggles, and that on its own, the prison sentence on its own brings plenty more mental health issues to come along. But the way I look at it is, it's shaped me as a person, and you get a strength. Like I've been through some traumatic moments in my life, and I've managed to come out the other side, and it gives me a self assurance now, having experienced them things that other people hasn't necessarily had to. And now I spend my time, or what time I have when I'm not at football, work, or kids clubs. I go around to academies and schools, and I do a life skills workshop. And we do talk about the football side of it, and we talk about, obviously, these young lads have things going on at home as well, what necessarily don't get spoke about. And I do a presentation about the football journey, and I do a bit about the time in prison, and then we do a questionnaire, which is always a sort of question Q&A, which is always interesting. You get some great questions in that, things you'd never even think of. Yeah, and then I've had some of the lads come and speak to me afterwards and open up to me. I've had lads that can relate to things that are going on with me, have gone on with me in the past that they're going through now, and it's sort of quite therapeutic.
I mean, I'm sure Bailey will agree with me here when I say that just sitting down and speaking to you for the last half hour or so, you can definitely tell that like the mental challenges as such you've had in your life have definitely shaped you to be the person you are today, and that is a massive credit to you. So I just wanted to say that quickly.
Nice one, my man. I appreciate that.
Back to you on the pitch, mate. You're at Corby Town now, and you're going pretty well. Like I said, looking for the promotion and everything. You've got Corn, who are a fair way ahead, but it's still early in the season, only January at the moment, and Corby are second with some games in hand. What's your assessment of the season at this point, mate?
I think we've had a really good season. We've won a lot of games. We sit second in the league. We're averaging over 2 points a game, and all you can do is applaud Corn and what they're doing. And let's all be honest. It's
Yeah,
up to them. Like, it's that all in their hands. But we'll still do our work, still do our job. Try and win as many games as we can. We've had some great performances. I think must have won about 15, 16, 17 games, something like that. So yeah, as I said, we've had a good season. It's just someone at the minute is having an exceptional season.
I was going to say, I think they've only lost one word, haven't they? And it was like a week or two ago. So you are
Yeah,
right. They are having an exceptional season. I mean, the playoffs are obviously something in your ambitions, I'm sure, with Corby. I've seen the manager, Gary Setchell, say it a couple of times for, bringing in players to try and push on, to try and go to that next level. What is it like for you? Because for me, looking at Corby, they've been at step 3 before, they've been across the National League systems before, and it very much now looks like a setup that could compete at step 3. With your experience and being a captain there at Corby, what do you think can happen with the club?
the setup of the club, so the stadium and the fan base, it's got the highest average attendance in the league. The stadium, I've played in stadiums in step 1 and step 2 that aren't as good as Corby Stadium, and when the fans turn up and beat the drum, um, it's a really good atmosphere there. So in terms of the setup and everything, it's all ready to go to be promoted 1 or 2 more leagues. It's just now, as players and managers and owners, is just giving ourselves the best chance and doing the right things to make that happen. Like I said, in any league and non-league, it's tough because there's only one automatic,
Yeah.
and then you sort of get to the playoffs, and it's always a bit of lottery. And normally, the team that finish second don't go up, so we might want to finish fifth.
I mean, yeah, it has happened a few times. I think it's happened quite a lot in National League North, especially. I mean,
Yeah.
I mentioned Gary Setchell there. Just quickly on him as a manager, what's it like to play for him? Because I've spoken to a couple people involved in like non-league football, and they say he's a good character, a good guy. What's he like to play for?
Yeah, Gary Setchell's one of the best managers I've had. The way he sort of manages people and me, and the things he's done for me after not knowing me for that long, um, I'll always be forever in his debt. And in terms of football, pretty much everything he says, I was thinking. So he hits the nail on the head with pretty much everything. Well, if we're right, that is.
Mm.
But yeah, he knows what he's talking about. He's been around non-league football a long time himself. He's had quite a few promotions, and hopefully we can add another one to our list.
I mean, Bailey, is there anything at all you want to add, whether it's about Corby or non-league, or just anything in general, mate?
What I was going to ask, obviously, being I'll use this word lightly, senior player at Corby now, is there any youngsters pushing through that you think that have got a really good sort of path ahead of them?
Yeah, there's definitely potential there. I'm sure you guys all know which ones. Fletcher Toll, who scored about 19 goals, I think, already. I'm sure he's going to have a few clubs sniffing around at some point. You got Ruben Marshall as well, who's a young player who works as I won't say that word, works his nuts off. um, yeah, you got Slinny, who plays central midfield, who seems a lot older than he is, but I think he's only about 23. I don't want to miss anyone out here if they listen back to it. But yeah, there's some good young talent there, with potential. You got young Kyle as well, who's young. You got Ryan as well. He'll have big futures ahead of him. So yeah, hopefully it's always nice to see when you play non-league and you play with young lads, and then you go on to see him do well. There's lads at Kingsley and Sonny Carey, who was a young lad. You come in, you watch him, and he's now off, or he's off playing in the Championship now at League One in Blackpool. So it's always good to see them ones do well, because you can call them up for tickets.
Definitely. I mean, it's interesting you say about like Corby there, Bailey, and youngsters coming through, because there's so many like grassroots teams in Corby, like the Northants combination leagues and so forth. I've played against dozens in my career.
I think there's about 20 in each age
Yeah,
group, I think.
so there is a lot. There is a lot of grassroots clubs in the town. Also, just quickly before we start to round off, Rory, we ask every guest this question, and it's almost like a leaving message as such.
Yeah.
So the question we ask every guest is, if you have any advice for someone who is struggling to find their feet in football or everyday life, what would that be?
Just do everything to the sort of maximum you can. Don't have any regrets. So when you, like I said earlier, when you put your head on the pillar at night, you know if you've done absolutely everything. You know if you haven't bothered going to the gym. You know if you didn't quite track your runner, you couldn't be bothered, or you just know. You know when you put your head on the pillow. So just do everything you can, to be where you want to be, and whether you get there or not, or wherever you end up, you can have peace of mind knowing that you give it everything.
And then from you, Bailey, is there anything else that you want to say finally before we start to round off?
Another question we ask guests is, if you could name the best player you've ever played with and the best player you've ever played against.
Best player I've ever played with. Um, Probably, obviously, you've got Andre Gray that's played in the Prem. Luke Berry, who has come through the youth at Cambridge United with me, who scored. I think he scored for Luton in the Premier League last season and scored in every league on the way up. Um, yeah, they're probably the best two. Or Nick Pope. When I played with Nick Pope, I used to travel in with him at Cambridge United, who's obviously now the Newcastle goalkeeper and England international. In terms of against, and this is the one I'll talk about in the pub when I'm growing old, is Jamie Vardy.
Yeah.
When I was at Cambridge United, he was at Fleetwood. He was up front. I was centre half. We beat them 2-1, and I scored the winner. So that's the one I'll be telling the kids about.
I mean, did you manage to keep up with him at all, or did he outpace you at any point in the game?
To be fair, he probably did outpace me. I can't remember a lot. I don't remember much about the game other than I scored. We'll leave it at
That's all that
that.
I mean, that's the perfect way to round off then, mate. Look, Rory, thank you for coming on today, mate. Best of luck for the season with Corby. I'll be watching closely to see how it unfolds and to make sure that you finish above Wellingborough and Russian Diamonds.
Nice one, my man. You guys take it easy. It's been my pleasure.
You too as well, mate.
No
I mean,
worries,
Bailey,
mate,
as
you too.
always, mate, thank you for being here. It's good to be back, isn't it, pal?
Yeah, it definitely is.
And of course, thank you to everyone who has tuned in today. This is our first podcast in a few months due to personal commitments. And it's the first time we've spoken about the Football Content Awards, which feels an age ago, doesn't it, Bailey? I just wanted to say quickly, thank you to everyone who voted. We didn't win in the end, but the evening was just incredible. To be at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium was a real privilege. And it was all thanks to everyone who voted. So thank you very much. If you are interested in the sponsorship spoken at the top of the episode, do get in contact. But until next time, thank you, Rory. Thank you, Bailey. And we will see you later.
Nice.